when she testifies, they're probably gonna go so much in depth. Remember, a lot of this, like, it's gonna be getting crazy in court too, because they're gonna have to show these videos, these free call videos.
The courtroom buzzed with the low murmur of anticipation, a solemn symphony of whispers, shifting chairs, and occasional camera clicks echoing beneath the ornate dome of the federal courthouse in downtown Manhattan. Golden morning light spilled through the high-arched windows, pooling in warm puddles on the polished oak floors, bathing the chamber in an ethereal glow that belied the storm brewing inside. It was day 17 of the trial that had the entire nation glued to every live stream, podcast, and breaking news update. At the center of the maelstrom sat Sean Diddy Combs, media mogul, music titan, cultural icon, now reduced to the nervous figure adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit, eyes darting from the bench to the gallery and back again. His usual bravado, the kind that once dominated stages and boardrooms, had vanished, replaced by a haunted look that flickered each time someone new entered the room. Every creak of the courtroom door was a jolt to his spine, every shift of the prosecutors, papers a whisper of doom. Today wasn't just another day of testimony. Today was the day Cassie was scheduled to take the stand, and Diddy knew exactly what that meant. He had read the pre-testimony briefings, he had heard the rehearsal leaks, and most importantly, he had lived through what she was going to describe. A decade of love, control, luxury, and silence, now unraveling like a scarf caught in a high wind. He knew that once Cassie began to speak, the spell would break, the mask would fall, and the world would see what lay beneath the carefully curated image he had built over decades. He had paid her once to keep quiet. Now her voice was about to be the loudest sound in the courtroom, and it terrified him. He leaned over to his lead attorney, William Gray, whose chiseled jaw and silver hair gave him the appearance of a modern-day Caesar. The man had defended billionaires, oligarchs, even a few ex-presidents, but Diddy could see the strain in his eyes. This wasn't just a battle for legal innocence. It was a battle for narrative, for identity, for empire. "Gray," Diddy whispered, his voice like cracked glass. "We can't let her speak. Not like this. Not everything." Gray sighed, fingers steepled beneath his chin, and gave Diddy a glance full of calculation and caution. "We're filing an emergency motion. Last chance. But it's a Hail Mary." Diddy didn't care if it was divine intervention or devil's luck. He needed that testimony muted, redacted, sanitized, erased if possible. Because if Cassie began to speak her truth, the walls of denial he had hidden behind would come crashing down like Jericho's. Outside the courthouse, crowds had begun to swell. Protesters, supporters, paparazzi. Some held signs, "Justice for Cassie." Others shouted through megaphones, both in defense and condemnation of the man on trial. The tension had built for weeks, whispers of settlements, payoffs, coercion. But now there was no going back. No more non-disclosure agreements, no more PR spin. Just raw testimony, recorded, reported, dissected. Judge Eleanor Whitmore entered the courtroom promptly at 9 a.m. She was a no-nonsense presence, known for her laser-like focus and intolerance for spectacle. Her black robes flowed like a shadow as she took her seat, gavel striking with a sharp crack that silenced the room like a gunshot. "Court is now in session," she said, voice crisp and authoritative. "We will begin with the matter brought forward by the defense." Gray stood, composed and clear. "Your Honor, we move to file an emergency motion to suppress or, in the alternative, limit the scope of the witness testimony scheduled for today, specifically regarding Ms. Ventura's personal account of events unrelated to direct charges." There was a pause. A murmur rippled through the crowd. On the prosecution's side, Ada Monica Reyes raised an eyebrow, already rising to her feet, ready to pounce. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she began, "this is an attempt to gag a victim. Ms. Ventura's account is not only relevant, it is crucial context to the pattern of abuse, coercion, and manipulation that this case seeks to illuminate." Diddy's throat clenched. He tried to maintain his composure, but the words cut into him like blades. Pattern of abuse, coercion, manipulation. Each word dragged behind it years of memories he had buried, moments rebranded in his mind as passion, chaos, love. Judge Whitmore frowned, turning her gaze toward the defense. Mr. Gray, this is the third motion of its kind. What legal grounds do you believe have changed between now and your last filing? Gray cleared his throat, sensing the weight of the room. Your Honor, we believe the risk of undue prejudice far outweighs the probative value of Miss Ventura's proposed testimony. We anticipate descriptions that are graphic, emotionally charged, and in many respects, outside the temporal scope of the prosecution's main timeline. Judge Whitmore steepled her fingers, her expression unreadable. And you, Mr. Combs, she said, looking directly at the defendant, do you understand what you're asking? Diddy stood, hesitated, then nodded. His voice trembled, but it was steady enough to carry. I understand, Your Honor, but what she's going to say, it'll destroy me. There was a stunned silence. The gallery held its breath. The reporters jotted furiously. Even Gray looked surprised. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Mr. Combs, this is not about your image. It is not about your reputation. It is about justice. If Miss Ventura's words are truthful and relevant, this court will not silence her because they make you uncomfortable. Diddy's chest rose and fell rapidly. He sat down slowly, hands trembling, and then the door opened. Cassie entered. Cassie walked with quiet purpose, her heels clicking against the courtroom floor like the countdown of a clock. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last. Diddy's eyes locked onto her as if he were staring into a mirror that had finally decided to reflect the truth. She was poised, elegant, composed, but under the surface, he knew her. He could still remember the weight of her silence. He had studied it, shaped it, weaponized it. And now, it was about to become a sword turned against him. She took the stand, raised her right hand, and swore an oath that would rip apart the fabric of secrecy that had protected him for years. Please state your name for the record, said Ada Reyes. Cassandra Elizabeth Ventura, she replied, voice calm but steady with a fire buried beneath it. The kind of fire that doesn't rage, it smolders, and in its smoldering, it devours everything. Diddy leaned forward, his hand squeezing the edge of the defense table until his knuckles turned white. He could feel the courtroom spinning, not from dizziness, but from the spiraling sense that nothing would be the same after this. Do you understand that you are testifying under oath and that all statements must be truthful under penalty of perjury? I do. There was a long pause as Reyes shuffled her notes and gave Cassie a soft glance, almost a permission to begin. But Cassie didn't need it. She was ready. She had rehearsed this, not in front of mirrors, not with lawyers, but in her mind, every night for years, every time she cried in silence, every time she looked in the mirror and asked herself if she was crazy, every time she tried to convince herself it was love. She began. I met Sean when I was barely out of my teens. I was naive, wide-eyed, and full of hope. I thought I was walking into a fairy tale. What I got was a labyrinth. A beautiful, golden cage where the doors were never really locked, but I was never really free. Diddy shifted uncomfortably. Reyes didn't stop her. Judge Whitmore didn't either. In the beginning, it was all love, or what I thought was love. Gifts, trips, lavish attention. He made me feel special, unique, chosen, but soon, the attention turned into ownership. He told me what to wear, what to eat, who I could talk to. If I laughed too hard at someone else's joke, he'd go quiet for days. If I didn't answer his text fast enough, he'd show up, unannounced, furious. The gallery was dead silent. Every breath, every blink was synchronized with her voice. There were rules, unspoken at first, then spoken, then shouted. There were cameras in rooms I didn't know had cameras, guards that weren't just there for his safety, but to monitor mine. I had assistants who would report on me, stylists who were paid to suggest only clothes he liked. I had to ask permission to visit family. I had to lie to friends about bruises. I learned to smile through pain. Diddy's stomach clenched. Even the most seasoned jurors looked visibly uncomfortable. One of them, a woman in her 40s, tilted her head and subtly wiped at the corner of her eye. "It wasn't always violent," Cassie said. "Sometimes it was worse than that. It was silence. I remember once I asked him if I could record a song I had written. It was about heartbreak, not about him, just about love and pain. He listened, then said it sounded like I was planning to leave him. I told him it wasn't like that. He didn't speak to me for a week. When he did, he told me I'd never record again unless it was his idea." Adia Reyes let the silence linger. This wasn't just about building a case. It was about letting the courtroom feel the cage Cassie had lived in. "Did he ever physically assault you?" Reyes finally asked. Cassie took a deep breath. "Yes." The word felt heavier than a bullet. "Diddy." Closed his eyes briefly, as if shielding himself from the shrapnel of a truth he could no longer outrun. "He slapped me once after I said no to going to one of his parties. Just once, but it was enough. It told me everything. And after that, he never needed to slap me again. Because I learned to say yes." She looked up, not at the jury, not at Reyes, but at Diddy. "There were worse things. Things I can't talk about here because I haven't even said them to myself yet. But I will say this. He controlled me. Mind, body, spirit. He told me who I was, and for a long time I believed him." Diddy suddenly stood. Everyone turned. His attorney tried to pull him down, but he shook his head. "Your Honor," he said hoarsely, "I need to say something." Judge Whitmore arched a brow. "You'll speak through your attorney or not at all." "Please," he said. This is becoming a character assassination." "Mr. Combs," she said coldly, "this is called testimony. Sit down, or I will hold you in contempt." Diddy stared at her, then back at Cassie. For the first time, he realized he didn't recognize the woman on that stand. She wasn't the young girl who laughed at his jokes, who danced for him in hotel rooms, who cried into silk pillows. She was someone new, someone powerful, someone with a voice. He sat. Cassie continued. "I tried to leave several times. Each time he made me feel like the villain. He'd say I was betraying him, that I owed him, that without him I'd be nothing. And for a while, I believed that too. Until one day, I didn't." "Do you remember that day?" Reyes asked. "Yes," Cassie said, smiling faintly. "It was the day I realized that being free wasn't about running. It was about telling." Reyes nodded and stepped back. No further questions at this time. Judge Whitmore looked around the courtroom and then said, "Cross-examination tomorrow. We're adjourned for the day." Gavel. Bang. The room exhaled all at once. Cassie stepped down. Diddy didn't look at her. Couldn't. Because in that moment, he wasn't the mogul. He wasn't the myth. He was just a man cornered by truth, and she had finally spoken it. The conference room adjacent to the courtroom had become a bunker for Diddy and his legal team. The moment the judge struck the gavel and Cassie stepped down, Diddy practically stumbled through the side door, flanked by attorneys, assistants, and PR agents who swarmed like bees around a crumbling hive. The room was sterile. White walls, fluorescent lights, a mahogany table that had likely hosted dozens of high-profile defense teams before. But this wasn't a strategy meeting anymore. It was a panic room. Diddy ripped off his suit jacket and tossed it onto a chair. Sweat clung to his forehead despite the humming air conditioning. William Gray closed the door behind them and sighed deeply, removing his glasses as if bracing for a migraine. "That was devastating," Gray said flatly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "She didn't just testify, she buried you with poetry." Diddy paced like a man trying to escape a cell that wasn't there. "She's lying, or she's exaggerating. You heard the tone. That was theater. She's an actress now. Everyone knows that. She wants sympathy, a story, a Netflix deal." "Even if that's true," Gray snapped, "the jury doesn't see it that way. They saw a victim, a woman reclaiming power. Your outburst didn't help." Diddy pointed a trembling finger at Gray. I'm not gonna sit there while she rewrites history like I'm some monster. I gave her everything, everything, and now she's painting me like... He broke off, his throat thick with something between rage and sorrow. Like I'm some kind of predator. Gray was quiet. For a moment, no one said anything. Then one of the junior attorneys, a young woman named Dana, spoke up. We need to prepare for tomorrow. She's not done. Reyes is going to bring out more details on redirect. They're going to let her build momentum. Then we kill the momentum, Diddy growled. File something. I don't care what. Something. Official. A restraining order. Emotional distress. Mistrial. File a damn weather report if it slows her down. Gray looked like he was aging by the minute. You already tried to mute her. Whitmore shut it down. Do you understand what that means? You've lost the moral high ground. Now every word she says sticks harder because you tried to stop her from saying it. I didn't try to stop her from telling the truth, Diddy argued. I tried to stop her from telling a story that's designed to destroy me. This is a hit job, Will. It's a hit job dressed in victimhood. Another member of the team, Marcus, head of crisis management, leaned in. We need to get ahead of the public narrative. If you want to survive this in any capacity, financially, professionally, we have to go nuclear on messaging. Discredit the story, highlight the gaps, remind the world you've never been convicted of a damn thing. Gray turned on Marcus. Don't be stupid. If we spin this now, it looks like retaliation. You want headlines tomorrow reading Diddy slams Cassie post testimony? He'll be canceled before lunch. Diddy flopped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. He looked like a boxer after round 12, eyes swollen, soul battered. What if I settle? He muttered. What if I offer her something to walk away? You can't settle this, Dana said gently. This isn't a civil suit. This is public, federal, and being watched by millions. The court doesn't care about NDAs anymore. So what do I do? Diddy looked up, eyes rimmed. Red. Just sit there while she tells the world I'm the devil? Gray folded his arms, choosing his words with the care of a surgeon. If you want to win the legal case, you sit there. You let us do our jobs. But if you're asking how to win, the war, the one out there. He nodded toward the window, where reporters and camera crews buzzed like flies. Then you're asking the wrong question. What's the right question? Gray leaned in, voice low. The right question is, who do you become after all this burns down? Diddy said nothing, and somewhere in the quiet, Cassie's voice still echoed.